Welcome back to the Culture Creators podcast. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Daniel Simpson. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bryn. I appreciate being here.
So you are the GM
Correct.
of BSS here.
BSS here and Gryphon Psychology
and Gryphon
in
Psychology.
Queensland.
Could you just, for the listener, place yourself of what you do and how you've come here to talk to me today?
Sure. Well, BSS and Gryphon are privately owned EAP, so Employee Assistance Program providers.
Yep.
We work in Western Australia, we work as BSS, and in Queensland we work as Gryphon, but we really provide services across Australia, New Zealand, some parts of Southeast Asia as well. We are probably unique in the EAP space in that we focus predominantly in the heavy industries, and within that predominantly the resource sector, so mining and oil and gas. We're about a 20-year-old business.
Yep.
We still have our founding directors, so we keep a strong sense of, I guess who we are and why we started, and we have constant reminders of that, by having those people here.
So, as the GM, to what degree do you see the culture of the organisation linked to its actual performance?
Oh, look, absolutely crucial. Our performance is based, I guess, specifically around how we see ourselves, rather than how we see the market in general is based. So we think that we offer a different proposition to other EAPs and probably to other psychological service providers as well. And a lot of that is based around our vision of who we are. So one of our founding directors likes to say that fitness for work and critical incident response is in our DNA. And so both BSS and Gryphon are safety sensitive companies. We work with helping organisations manage risk in the workplace, and that forms a very strong part of our identity and our culture. So everything we do has to wear two hats. Is it good for the individual, and do we promote well-being, but are we also helping organisations and within that individuals themselves manage risk?
Yeah, because I guess it's finding that balance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Of looking after the individuals in these organisations that you serve, as well as ensuring that the organisation itself performs.
Correct, absolutely, yeah.
So how do you actually differentiate in the EAP market?
In the EAP space, well, I guess for a few reasons. I guess if we talk about who we are as a business, it's very nuts and bolts things. We employ all of our clinical staff, and that's a big difference. And as EAPs are getting larger, most EAPs will contract their work out. So we employ our own people so that we have, I guess, we don't just offer a point of difference in terms of psychologists and now social workers and even in one case a counsellor. We're not just offering them income, we're offering them a place to become part of a team.
Right.
That helps us retain people, and it helps us also build their knowledge base, which increases our capacity to deliver services in the way that we think is market appropriate for our market particularly.
And I suppose that stability of employing people gives you an opportunity to create the culture around it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to having contractors that might come and go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I'm not sure what class of size of business you'd call us. We're probably somewhere between small and medium size. And, when you are of that size, so across our two businesses, we're about 100 people. The people you bring in can have a dramatic impact on your culture. But you can as well, as we know, have them pick up elements of our culture, but it's a slower burn, I find. So we find a lot of our...
How do you mean?
Well, it's, we don't have big resources to put people through the BSS way or the Gryphon Psychology way. So while we do that, and we probably do that a bit slowly, I would say, so there's a greater onus on us at recruitment to say, this person could be a BSS person. This person could be a Gryphon person. And those are phrases you hear. Yeah.
Right.
Somebody comes out of an interview and says, I feel like a Gryphon person.
So what does that mean?
I guess aligned to our values, and aligned to, by greater extension, I guess, the culture. So, so we have a number of stated values, and the ones that are, that are most important really to me are, agility, the pursuit of excellence, collaboration and accountability.
Right.
So we look for people that that embody those in some ways.
Yeah.
And often in an interview we'll even ask about those values and say, well, what do they mean to you? Yeah. I think private businesses, when it comes to something like accountability, private businesses have put a different level of accountability on individuals because, and I often say, so I spend about an hour with each clinical staff member as they come into the business, and we talk about various aspects and why we think we're different. And one of the things I say is every share owned in the business is walking around in the business every given day.
Right.
It isn't a nebulous shareholder group and profits go off to some unseen group via dividends. Everybody with skin in the game walks the corridors.
Right.
And that creates a level of accountability, and
Yes.
some people thrive in that and some people wither. And I think the ones that thrive appreciate the immediacy of action on, whether it's something negative or whether it's something positive. A great idea comes up here, you can take that straight to a director.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough and it holds up under scrutiny, it might be actioned.
Right.
Yeah.
So, whilst recognising that, as a director and having other directors here, the leadership roles have a certain power of influence over the culture, to what degree is it also the responsibility to maintain it shared then?
So yeah, I mean, are you asking to what responsibility do other individuals have to maintain the culture within the business? Yeah.
You've got this, the reason why I asked the question is you've got this really nice, strong sense of values in it.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to tease out and understand is that solely director-led, or is it also...
Oh yeah, sure. So no, so it's led from every direction, isn't it?
Yes.
I think there is obviously a strong role for the leaders in the business to exemplar what we see the business as. Being the key characteristics, I guess, of the business. But you're looking for people to bolster that from the other side as well, rather than just say, well, you guys lead the way and we'll benefit from it, hopefully, or we'll get you to fix it if it's bad. You'd hope that at every level of the business, people are building that culture, and that might be around accountability, making sure that we're holding each other up to standards, or supporting each other through standards, or if there are concerns, making sure that accountability means that the concerns rise. It's again, companies our size, so I think the split is it's about 60. I think there's about 65 people here in WA, and we're increasingly spread, and about 35 to 40 people over in Queensland. As I say, individuals can have a huge impact at that level, and and I'm sure many smaller businesses would sort of understand or have a similar experience when you hire 2 or 3 people from the same walk of life, or they come in from the same business, or they've worked at a different government department. 2 or 3 people is a massive little number up against a team of 60. So so very aware of the power of the individual in a company our size. Yeah.
There we go. Has that occurred here?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the years, and for good and bad, there have been people that fundamentally changed who we are for the better and brought these great skill sets in and this great approach to how we provide care. And then there have been people that have come in and probably haven't been dramatically bad, but when one person will leave, the rest go as well, and so you get these kind of these.
So they move as a mob.
Move as a mob, exactly. So. But in saying that, the best referrals and the best staff you get are the ones recommended by people already in the business. So we provide recruitment bonuses for people that recommend others in. So by far and wide, you see that as a positive rather than a negative. But it's just something that we're always aware of, that that one person can make a huge difference to who you are.
Is it an agenda item for the directors?
An agenda item around culture?
Yeah.
Probably, definitely at a managerial level. So, so our directors. So in terms of our board, so a number of our directors, our founding directors, are heading towards the end of their careers. So, so I'm the director with the most day-to-day involvement, and so we have a very strong management board. So at under myself as general manager, we have clinical managers, 2 here, 1 in Queensland. We have business managers in both locations, financial controllers and administration managers. And across that team, I think it's 10 of us, including myself, we are rolling out a strategic plan that is particularly designed to answer a challenging question for us,
Right.
which is that we've been very successful over 23 years in WA, and Gryphon turns 20 next year. We've been very successful over a number of years, but the things that have made us successful, which is particularly our agility and accountability, those real key call-outs from our values, they don't scale well, and we're getting bigger.
Yes.
So the strategic plan, is made up of a number of different goals and pillars and visions. But what's underneath that all is, how do we become a bigger version of BSS? How do we become a bigger version of Gryphon, and not just a bigger EAP?
Yes.
Because accountability and agility, as I say, it's
Start to strain
strain
scale.
as you start to have employees and clients that are further and further away from you, and you have less and less ability to put hands on people and put hands and sit in front of clients. So in many cases we've started contracts with, say, a single mine site, and then gone to an asset within a company, and then that company itself across Australia, and then that company through other parts of the world. So, as I say, the more you do that, you have to find a way to ensure that what they like about you travels with you. Yeah.
So how are you planning?
How are we doing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've caught you to a rather interesting point.
Yeah. And so how are we doing that? So the strategic plan really asks us to look at things like, particularly those key areas, the key one which I called out earlier is recruitment. So how do we continue to find people that are Gryphon people, are BSS people? How do we ensure that the things that we like about BSS scale so that any employee who starts in the business, regardless of how big we are, still feels those key values. And those key values that we get from the clinical point of view, if I think about our clinicians only, having good access to clinical managers who are able to not just provide peer supervision, but are also to take pressure off when times get tough. And we know times can get tough for psychologists and social workers in a number of ways, with difficult clients or at-risk clients or subpoenas for notes and the like. And a big part of what we do is put maybe not a safety net, but a bit of an umbrella of support around people in that regard. So making sure that they always have that sense that somebody's at the end of the phone,
Yes.
And even if I go to the wider management team, we as a business try to ensure that all of our managers have a say in every aspect of the business.
Yes.
So a financial controller is absolutely allowed to, at a management meeting, question a clinical manager about some of the decisions she is making. In this case, we have all three of our clinical managers are women. Likewise, it's not to say that he gets a decision in the process, but he has the right to say something. And vice versa, a clinical manager gets to push back at the finances of the business as well, and say that some of these decisions are going to impact quality of care. So we try and keep a respectful adversarial system, I guess you'd probably call it, across the management team, and that has to continue. That has to continue because as long as it's respectful, debate and argument is a good tool for excellence. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's just I guess just one angle of it, but there's there's I think there's something like 75 individual points that we're trying to look at over the next 3 years.
75 individual points.
75 individual points across 10 managers. And as I say, recruitment is certainly a large one. Well-being is another significant one.
Yeah. And these are all different points.
Different points, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you explain culture if somebody asked you? And how does it work?
Okay. it's a big question. It's the one I should have prepared for. Look, to me, is the culture. Culture is. It's an intangible, and it's. I guess it's almost the story that the company lives and breathes.
Right.
I was going to say it's the story companies tell, but I don't think it is. I think those are actual stories, but it's culture is what I think permeates out to your staff when they leave at the end of the day, to your clients when you have a meeting, you provide them information, but I think your culture permeates out of you by, you know,
so it's out of the,
and gives them a sense of, you know, of the substance, for good or bad, that's behind the information. You know, one thing that I guess COVID has done, you know, for the bad, is really kept us all away from each other. Yes. And you know, online video for meetings or for counselling is certainly coming along in leaps and bounds. There's no doubt about it. It's certainly incredibly efficient, and you know, many times I've enjoyed the new era of 30-minute online meetings rather than 60-minute meetings because you've travelled into the city. But you know, and I was even reminded though yesterday, went in to see one of our really large clients who had some of their visiting global execs over, and I came out of there enthused just by being in the same room as them, and they were enthused and were saying and said words like, some of this is a revelation, and I'm not sure that is purely based on the information you say to people.
Yes. It's
about being there and people having a perception of what drives you as an individual, what drives you as a business. So I guess our culture in some ways is what drives us as well.
How does it drive you? Because obviously, whilst you are a director in the company, one thing I've learned is that everybody gets impacted by the culture that they work in, whether you're the top dog or not.
Yeah, well, how our culture drives me, I guess, is I have like everybody, we have financial requirements, but beyond that, you know, work has to be about more than money, doesn't it? You know, because there's
one of the questions is how you balance profits against culture.
So there's lots of ways to earn money. Our culture drives us because I get a personal value out of being attached to something that I see as dynamic and something I see as upstanding and interesting. You know, I have my academic background is twofold. It's occupational health and safety, but it's also I have an arts degree and majored in creative writing. So I enjoy the creative aspect of this business, and I enjoy the opportunities it gives me to communicate with people as well. You know, and whether sometimes that's via tender. You know, and I often sort of think to myself, I'd love to go back to this generation's arts students and the creative writers. They're wondering what they're going to do with their arts degree. I use it every single day of my life. You know, how you tailor messages to audiences is based in empathy, which is the degree that these next generation are actually undertaking, even though they don't recognise it.
Yes, it's tapping into something.
Absolutely,
into this unseen, intangible space.
And that's the thing that drives me. That kind of how do you tailor a message to best suit your target audience and as many people within that target audience as possible.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously EAP, listen to it, is an expanding space.
Yeah.
And so if we look outside of BSS, that would mean that more people in workplaces are requiring some sort of support or help. It's a fair assumption, conclusion. What place do EAPs have in feeding back upstream into the companies that they serve?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. I think it's an interesting area for EAPs because it's not our space to define a company's culture, but I think it is our role to understand a company's culture and to take on board the needs of the individual in that context to ensure that they're successful in that role. So it's actually a fine line to balance, isn't it? To not put our own opinions of work into the minds of other people, but rather to say, okay, well, to be successful in this role, what do we know about this organisation? So the responsibility on us is really at a client engagement level, and we're quite lucky in that the space that we work in, which is, as I say, predominantly resource sector, but broadly heavy industries, heavily engaged client organisations, and an EAP is not new to any of them.
No.
It's it's been around for decades, if not generations, and they are driven to getting high levels of EAP utilisation. So we have great access to companies who will provide us with any information we need, and that might be about additional programs that they have, and such as, let's say, additional support packages for family and domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, a number of things. We'll constantly get a stream of that information, so that our clinicians have these toolboxes that they can say, okay, well, you're from company A. Well, we can understand. We can also let you know that there is this range of other services available. We've had from one of our largest companies, we've had a vice president dial into one of our monthly psych meetings just to talk, which is quite unheard of. We're talking about incredibly busy people, but the priority they put on some of these services is really significant. So it's our role, and again, going back to another one of those strategic items, it's our role to ensure that level of client-company engagement maintains despite us growing in size, and we need to be engaging not just with our largest clients, but with every client.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because like I said, I often see, there's people require help and support, but what's going on in the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the line between what's going on in the workplace and what's going on in their home, and how the two come together.
Absolutely, and that's and EAPs, as I guess probably most people know, or possibly not, is they are traditionally and uniformly available to family members as well.
Yeah.
And that's based on that simple piece of knowledge that whatever happens at home, whether it directly involves the individual or not, they're bringing it into the workplace, aren't they? So yeah. So that line's very clear, and as you say, as I said, our role is to understand what the company's culture is, particularly around how they care for their employees, and also to provide, I guess, where they require it, assistance back, and that might be in helping to undertake, job design surveys, or or even mental health surveys, kind of culture surveys, those kind of things, and we do some of that. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the line of inquiries I have around culture with this podcast is not only to understand, what are the factors that make positive and less than positive cultures, but also how we can develop our own capacity to shape the cultures that are around us. So I'm interested in, obviously there's you, Daniel, here, director, and you are consciously thinking about the culture and the general environment and vibe of the organisation. How much of that do you take out and put into other parts of your life as well?
Oh, look, I think I immediately think to part of my life as a parent.
Yeah.
Right? So I have a 19-year-old, 17-year-old, and 11-year-old. What we try and create, I guess you'd almost call it the culture of our family, our specific family unit, is not dissimilar to what you do at work, or the ways you do it is not dissimilar. The big one is, transparency. I think, I think role modelling is the easy one to say, but I think it's transparency. So I try and show both people within Gryphon and BSS and my own children the best and worst of me. Possibly not the very worst. As a leader, there is a time where you have to be the one that's fearless and is going to make sure that we get through whatever's happening. But I try to make sure that people see when I have things that I'm not comfortable with, or that I've got to struggle my way through. And I actually enjoy talking to my children about that as well, and the 11-year-old as much as the 19-year-old, because I think as children's very easy to see the things your parents do as being, perfect, or as being, excellent. And I think the reality is most of us, or maybe it's not most of us, maybe it's just me, I've made a series of good decisions through my life without being great ones, and success comes through the accumulation of the good, not the great, in my experience. So I want my children, as much as I want the organisation, to see that, our success comes from just consistent good decisions, rather than that one excellent decision that will change everything. So Yeah, so I think there's a level of transparency that is, needed to be a parent and to raise children who will be a bit resilient.
Yeah.
And carrying that back into the organisation, I think, you never want to be that leader who everything's all shining, all dancing, until it's not, and then it's all gloom and doom.
Yeah.
So we do, I'm currently writing this year's State of the Nation address, so the 6-month and 12-month marks, we do a bit of a State of the Nation, and sometimes that's just the numbers. This is what we've done this year, this many 1,000 counselling referrals and this many tens of thousands of hours and whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's just what's coming around the corner, So it's, and this year it will be a bit more like that. Where do we see the industry going? Where do we see, BSS? Where do we see Gryphon going? We talked last year about the fact that this strategic plan was in its infancy and should be in place by the end of next year. So we put it in place this July, and that was in response to where we see ourselves growing. The next thing is, where do we see the industry going? And if you give people honesty every day, and if you're honest about the things that aren't going great, then they'll believe you when you say everything is going great. Because you've got runs on the board, You've got runs on the board, you don't sugarcoat things. So if things are great, things are great.
And people need to know.
Absolutely.
People need to know. There's nothing worse than the shock if we thought the company was going great and then all of a sudden there's redundancies.
Absolutely.
Where did that come from?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too is, and maybe in large companies you can't do this, but in companies of our size, you've got a wealth of talent within the business. So if you say to people, hey, there are bumpy days ahead for this reason or that reason, people will pull together, and they'll do it because, loyalty to the business and all of that, but some will do it just because they find that work interesting, As, a young 25-year-old manager, where I was working prior to coming over to BSS initially, we did some really tough things to save businesses, and career-wise made me, I've talked to a number of my younger managers about how COVID will, make them as managers, and the things that they've done over the last 3 years will mean that nothing else will be quite as tough. My version of that was the global financial crisis in 2008. And I was working at a labour hire company that I think, it felt like over a matter of weeks, but it was probably over a matter of months. Our billings went to basically a third of what they were. And as labour hire, we're working in healthcare, in aged care, and it was a year's worth of work just trying to keep doors open while others didn't, and grab a little bit more of the market. And it taught me life lessons that make me who I am today. So people don't necessarily run away from bad times. Some people will, but some will go, there's opportunity here, opportunity for development, opportunity for progression, all that kind of thing. So, and it's just a lot easier, right? It's a lot easier to be honest, than keep up a fiction or a story.
Indeed. One of the last questions I like to ask my guests is, what's the one thing about culture that we're not talking about that we should be?
Okay. You may need to edit the long pause out of this piece. That we're not talking about culture that we should be. The one thing that I often think is that, and it's, I guess a particular risk for companies with lesser resources, a smaller company, is that there is so much online and out there about what good culture is, and particularly for small companies, you've got to do that work yourself, is my feeling. You can't take a shiny LinkedIn post that says good culture is items 1 through 10 and just rote apply it to who you are, because everybody will have different opinions. And so if I think about the Gryphon culture, the BSS culture, we want to see ourselves as a caring organisation. We also want to see ourselves as a demanding organisation, and our culture is based, on how we measure those two things. We want to be demanding of our employees, but give them all the support and resources to achieve those demands, so they achieve their goals, company achieves its goals. And I'm not sure that language makes its way, or being able to talk about some of the kind of maybe the less soft aspects of culture that are still positive.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that makes its way into too many shiny posts. Shiny posts on social media. So maybe that's it. So my thoughts are, you build your culture from within, from taking a long look at yourself first, and then deciding, if that's a good culture, then what do you need to do to build that? And there's certainly obviously lots of self-reflection and auditing, and companies should usefully undertake things like, leadership skills inventories and those kind of things, and you do all that to make sure you're bringing in and you're testing your opinions as much as you can. But yeah, I think it begins at home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's been a great conversation.
Well, I've really enjoyed it, actually.
You have?
Yeah, I have.
And anything come up for you in reflecting on?
I think the biggest reflection is being so readily able to talk about it. Probably means that it has been the thing that has been at the forefront of our mind, and probably because of that strat plan and this growth piece, and that reflection about who we are. Thinking about this now, these are conversations that we're probably having on a weekly, if not a daily basis amongst the management team, and we're measuring our decisions against cultural impact. So if anything, it's probably highlighted for me that it is one of the major things that we're looking at the moment, which is we're not there yet by any means, but it feels like we're on a good path.
Superb.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bryn.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.